Pleased to welcome saxophonist, composer, arranger, all around amazing musician, Charles Owens, man. Thanks for joining me,
Greg, it's my pleasure. You know I love being here, man. Talking about myself.
man. Okay. Indeed. Oh my God. Man, I've tuned into many a Smalls stream telecast and caught your
Ooh,
sounds, man. And I've always been impressed by just
thank
the
you.
energy, the lyricism, and just the groove, man, in your playing. And I'm
Oh, thanks.
curious. We're going to talk about, of course, your new record out this summer, 10 years.
Hmm.
But I kind of want to get a bit of a benchmark or a bedrock of some of the stuff you listened to when you were first coming into musical consciousness, because it seems like that's informed a lot of like your sound and style, man. What did
Sure,
you first
sure.
start digging on?
Well, man, I remember being sitting at the piano when I was still like a toddler, still in diapers, being totally um, transfixed on the piano and just listening to the chords that I played, which I had no idea what they were, just a bunch of notes at the same time. And so really early on, I got the music bug really early on. And a big moment in my life was when I was 11, I saw the movie Amadeus,
Hmm.
the Mozart movie. And at that point, I thought, I should just do this for the rest of my life.
Okay.
Because, I was already more into classical music and music than I'd say some 11-year-old kids were. And then when I saw that movie, and certain scenes in that movie just gave me a revelation of that I could do this for my life. And so I got really into classical music at that point. Then I got into Duke Ellington School for the Arts in
Hmm.
DC,
Okay.
which I went there for a year or so, and I met Wynton Marsalis there, and I met Davy Yarborough, who was my teacher, and that was when I was like 14, and so I started getting into, and the namesake Duke Ellington. I started getting into Duke Ellington, and then I moved to, my father owned a business in Miami, and so I moved to Miami to New World School of the Arts, which is another arts magnet high school. And then my friend, I had some great friends that were already like in it, you know what I mean? Like they already
Mhm.
caught that bug,
Yeah.
that bam bug, if you will,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and so my friend gave me a tape of Giant Steps on one side and Kind of Blue on the other.
Ooh. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. And so then I heard, everyone, of course, knows Giant Steps. All tenor players know Giant Steps, and then all, improvising musicians. But what really got me, and I hope everybody puts it on after this interview now and check it out, is
Hmm.
Spiral off of Giant Steps. Not
Okay.
Giant Steps or Countdown, which they did get me. Of course, I was just like amazed, like who wouldn't be, But when I heard Coltrane's tone on Spiral,
Mm.
Spiral, I guess is
Hmm.
this really high, like
Yeah.
chromatic long notes. I just felt that in my soul, man. And I thought,
Uh-huh.
if I could express myself even half as emotionally and spiritually as this man, then that's
Hmm.
what I want to do. And I said to myself, well, he's got 10 fingers. I got 10 fingers. He got a tenor saxophone. I got a tenor saxophone. There's got to be some way I can do this.
Nice.
And so that started me when I was 15, basically. And I
Wow.
never looked back after that.
That's
So
amazing.
Coltrane was the cat for me at
Hmm.
first.
Hmm. No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. But yeah, man, from Miami, you came to New York after that, right? To the
I
new
did.
school.
Yeah. I graduated in 92 at New School. And then at the New World School for the Arts. And then I
Mhm.
got into the New School and studied with the great Reggie Workman and Jim Hall,
Wow.
Buster Williams,
Wow.
you know,
Wow.
when I got there, Peter Bernstein and Brad Meldau and Spike and Larry Goldings were in the senior class.
Hmm.
And I was a
Hmm.
freshman, and I was like, I guess I should start practicing if I'm going to be that good in 4 years. I'm still not that good. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Oh man.
So it was like incredible. And like, that was when I got there. Peter Bernstein was playing in Cobb's Mob, so it was
Hmm.
Jimmy
Hmm.
Cobb and Brad Meldau and John Weber
Yeah.
and Peter Bernstein. And man, when I got to New York, my mind was it was blown every day,
I believe
by
it.
the stuff that I was witnessing.
I believe it. I believe it, man. And you were kind of at the vanguard too of when Smalls in the Village first opened, 1994, I believe.
Yes,
Man,
sir.
talk about that incubation. That's a really crucial locale for a gathering spot for a lot of you guys coming out in the mid and late 90s. Talk a little bit about that community, if you don't mind, back then.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Well, we had gotten word that this guy, this strange person, Mitch Borden, had opened up this jazz club, but he couldn't get a liquor license, so he was just going to do it. With just bring your own, beer and stuff. And one of the things that was really important about that is that sorry, hold on.
It's okay.
One of the things that's really important about that is that they didn't have to close at 4:00, and so that is what kind of birthed like the really late night, early morning jam sessions. And man, that was incredible. And so the first night that we opened was Peter Bernstein. I say we because I ended up working there too, and it's just my home club for years. I ended up helping to manage the place with Mitch, and also just work there constantly, and also work the door, anything that I could do. But yeah, it was Peter Bernstein, Eric Alexander, Brad Meldown, Omer Avital, and Joe Farnsworth.
Oh my!
That was the first band, and then the second night, it was just Brad Meldow trio. And then Eric Alexander also sat in a little bit too. So that was, and those guys at the time, and they still were our leaders of our sort of scene, of our clique, of our group, and that really set the tone for the rest of Smalls. And I played in such important ensembles there, the Jason Lindner Big Band.
Oh, such a group. That's a group, man.
I mean, every Monday, dude, for like 6 years, Wow. And then the Omer Avital sextet with, where I had to be in a band and play rhythm changes with Mark Turner and Joel Fromm and Myron Walden and Greg Tardy and Grant Stewart. Like they took rhythm changes solo. And then it was like, go, Charles, you come up with something now. It's like, wow. All right. And so, while that was obviously very challenging, it was a hugely crucial developmental thing for me, it was, when you have to get up there and make it happen. I mean, it's just that, take a rhythm change solo after Mark Turner really fast, like you just got to do it. And so it was, it made me, and also, I used to live at Smalls at one point. This is like a famous old story that people are like, wait a minute, I heard that you used to actually reside at the club.
Yeah.
And I did for 7 months,
Wow.
And it was wild. I mean, it was what it was, I couldn't find an apartment. And so I lived in the back room, and I showered in the health club across the street. And, during those 7 months, I had no bills or responsibilities. My responsibilities were to basically run the club when Mitch couldn't do it, and practice and write and play. And so, that was just massive growth. I just got to hear, every Wednesday night I got to hear Sammy Hell and Josh Redman and Brian Blade. Every Thursday night I got to hear Kurt Rosenwinkel, Mark Turner, Ben Street, and Jeff Ballard. Every Friday night I got to hear whatever incredible band they had, and then I played starting at 2:30 in the morning with my band. Every Monday night I played with the Jason Lindner Big Band. Every day I would rehearse and practice and write at the piano, and like, man, it was insane. I mean, it was the best. It was really hard too, because I was so poor. But I didn't have anything else to do.
That's amazing, Charles. That's amazing. Yeah, and I had heard that there were living quarters there for a while. Man, there were a few masters there. Before we move on, I do want to ask.
Sure. Let's talk as much about Smalls as you want, man.
There were a few masters. One of them I got to hear in the early 2000s on my first trip there. That was Harry Whitaker. That was one guy.
Man, I miss that man.
He was something else, man. But I also heard that Tommy Turrentine and Frank Hewitt were parts of that experience as well. And man,
they were. Tommy and I did live at Smalls together for a while.
Wow. Yeah. Any stories you can tell? He was something else, man. I love his.
Man, I don't know. Tom, I don't know if I can tell any of these stories, dude, but suffice to say, I mean, Tommy was a master, and being around him, you felt like you were around a master.
Yeah.
You know, which you were, but like he gave you that feeling, and he would tell stories about his brother and the scene. Wow. He would tell stories about, running around the East Village when he was younger, with Sonny Clark. You know, he and Sonny Clark were roommates for a long time.
That's my dude.
And so, yeah, right. Same. And I love, that record with him and Philly Joe and Paul Chambers is like, the classic of all classic piano trio records, where they played I Didn't Know What Time It Was. Anyway, we could talk about records forever too, right?
Yeah.
But we all wanted the best for Tommy. We all wanted Tommy to keep writing, and we wanted to play his music. And, we got as far as getting some charts together, and then it just never happened. But, we all loved him very much, and he did have a lot of stories for us. And, like I said, when you were around Tommy and he was in a good mood, like it was the best in the world. He had all the best stories. He knew everybody back then. I mean, obviously, and we just loved him so much, and we all felt really lucky. We knew how lucky we were to have him around.
Wow. That's amazing, Charles. Thank you for sharing, man. Thank you.
Of course, man. Yeah, man, that's my man, Tommy Turntine.
Man, something else. Something else. We'll talk some more offline. But man, you're playing. I noticed again, there's a lyricism, as you mentioned with Spiral. You've got a tone for days. But man, you know how to groove, and you know how to get down when you need to, which is something I love about your conception. And in this new record, as we fast forward, man, you've been on the Richmond scene, and there's definitely, in my opinion, something in the water in Richmond, man. Because
that James River water.
Yeah, man. Talk about the move to Richmond, and then finding these special guys that you're with. You've been with them for 10 years now.
Yeah, that's been great. Yeah. The move to Richmond was basically when in 2004, in 2002, I turned 30, got married, and got my wife pregnant. And so that was a huge year, and it was a turning point year for me. And, living in New York was amazing, and I had a great time. But also there's a lot of people, and there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of things that were starting to wear on me a little bit.
Okay.
And so I decided that, I wanted to make a switch to Virginia because I grew up there. I knew how beautiful the state was. And I knew that Charlottesville had a good music scene. I didn't know much about the Richmond music scene, but as soon as I got there, the guy named Jason Jenkins, a bass player, went to see Omer Avital concert in Richmond. And Omer, he's a big Omer fan. So Omer, he went backstage to talk to Omer, and Omer said, "Hey man, have you done a gig with Charles Owens yet?" And he's like, "No, like, of course I haven't. Why? How could I do a gig with Charles Owens?" And Jason was like, "Well, he lives in Charlottesville now." And so Jason was like, "Kidding me? Charles Owens lives in Charlottesville?" So he gave me a call, and I started working. My first gig in the city, or my second gig in Richmond, was Devon Harris on drums, a guy named Alan Parker on guitar, and Jason Jenkins on bass. And I've told this story a bunch with Devon, really young kid, just out of college, glasses, really shy. We start playing, he plays a little bit of something, and I look back and like, woo. And so I play a little bit of something, he looks at me like, woo. And then we were like, oh man, this is going to be a great gig. And then we just started playing together, and it felt amazing right off the bat. Like I was like, oh my man, this is the drummer for me. And he has been since that moment. And then similarly, a year later or so, I met, maybe not even a year, just a few months later, I met Andrew Randazzo on just a gig that someone had called me for. And he was still in school. He was a little bit younger than Devon. He was still in school. And so I had a gig with him, and he sounded amazing too, and got his number. And then right around the time that happened, Butcher Brown was just starting out too.
Okay.
Yeah. And the first bass player in Butcher Brown was not Andy. It was, they're going to kill me for forgetting this, but I think it was a guy named Chris Smith on bass. And he didn't last too long in the band for whatever reason. It was cool. But then they asked Andy, and so I've seen the beginning of Butcher Brown, just like all the guys in Butcher Brown have seen the start of my trio. I met Corey Fonville around the same time too. He was like, "Hey man, I'm Corey." And he's like 20, and he was like so young, dude. And now he's this like big, cool grown man, like
Yeah.
that, you know, but it's just amazing to watch all these cats grow like they have, you know. And so the Richmond scene definitely, you know, started making me do records that were more backbeat oriented, that were more groove oriented, that had electric instruments in it, you know. Randazzo, we made A Day With Us with Randazzo in 2015. A Day With Us is a trio record that we made with Randazzo and Devon, and Andy Randazzo was playing acoustic. But then, you know, I started hearing him play electric, and not only did he sound great on it, but like he loves playing electric bass. And so we started incorporating electric bass in the trio a little bit. And, you know, Butcher Brown and Andy and Devon, and basically in Virginia, has helped my sound become more groovy, more greasy, a little more country. You know, I got plenty of that New York Black American music swinging happening for years in New York. And then I came down here and I got a little bit more country, a little bit more backbeat, you know, a little bit more greasy and a little bit more down home, not quite as slick.
Right.
As a lot of cats are in New York. And I'm not talking smack about anybody trying to be slick, right? Because I love it. And it should be, music should be slick if you want it to be slick. But here it's just, it's not quite as, you know, the focus is more on bobbing your head, tapping your foot, feeling it in your body, relaxing, you know, cookouts, stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like, and that, you know, those guys, Butcher Brown has been a huge influence on me just as far as their records and their sound. And also, you know, more specifically, Devon Harris, AKA DJ Harrison, is a massive figure in the Richmond scene for so many people. And he's had a huge impact on my musical development, because he's not only a drummer, he plays keyboards in Butcher Brown, but he's also makes his own records from soup to nuts, as they call it.
Yeah.
I mean, he built the studio, he bought the mics, he bought the tape machine, he's the engineer, he plays drums, bass, guitar, keyboards, even horns, he sings, he raps, he writes all the lyrics. It's insane what he's done. If you go to djharrison.bandcamp.com, there's like 15 albums on there that he made by himself. It's just like, man, this guy's a genius. And so, you know, I've always wanted to closely associate myself with Devon in any possibility way I can. And so Devon also, we made a record quartet one time where Devon was playing Wurlitzer.
Wow.
That's a Charles Owens quartet as one. Great record.
Okay.
I really think that's one of my favorites, you know. And so, yeah, that's kind of how Virginia has rubbed off on me. And, you know, I grew up in Virginia too, so I'm certainly familiar with the vibes. But man, I'm so happy to have these guys in my life, dude. They're my muses too. You know how like movie directors will use the same actors all the time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because it'll be their muse. You know, these guys are my muses, and I talk about that like with like Duke Ellington's band was his muse.
Right.
If you hear some music in your head that you want to perform, you can either hear a bass part and a drum part, or like me, you can hear a Andrew Randazzo part and a Devon Harris part.
Yeah. That Duke Ellington scene, right? Yeah, writing for the cats and
writing for the cats. And it was so important, man, because, you know, because I know their sound and their capabilities and their strength so well, that gives me an advantage, you know.
Surely.
That's the whole point of having a band.
Yes, indeed. I love it, man. I love it.
Yeah.
Man, the sound, as I like to say sometimes, it just leapt out of the speakers, you know, when I was listening to this record, man. And
that's exactly what I was going for.
And the song choices too, man. I'm like, wow, that's really cool. Like Jaco Pastorius to Anita Baker, you know, to Duke Ellington, John Coltrane, man. Talk a little bit about, you know, conceiving, you know, the song selections and the arrangements.
Okay. Yeah, that's a huge part of it too. And one of the big, it's a recipe. I mean, one of the big factors for my trio's success has been repertoire. And it has to be saxophone trio is saxophone, bass, and drums all night, right? So like, if you don't play a lot of varied styles, people are gonna be like, oh, I'm getting a little sick of this saxophone, bass, drums, like all night, no chords, you know? And so like, you got to really come up with some different stuff every time to keep it really interesting. And that's another thing. If you listen to 10 years, this is like an advertisement for what an incredible rhythm section Andy and Devon are, because they play all the styles perfectly. Every style that we put out there, they're just so on it, not just well, but authentically well.
Yeah.
And so that's another part of it. Another part is, you know, that songs, I have to be very careful when I choose songs to play on saxophone, because I will not be using the lyrics of the songs when I play on saxophone. So the melody has to be super strong. Can't be a lot of repeating, like one repeating note a lot, because then it'll just sound like me going da 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 da. It sounds weird. But if there's lyrics to that, like then it sounds better when the lyrics are to it. But I don't have that. So so it's got to be really strong. And I wanted to pick songs that were really important to me. So I grew up with Anita Baker in the 80s, and I grew up with Todd Rundgren, listened to him, and Jimi Hendrix, Led Zeppelin, all the things that are on that record. These are music from my childhood. So I really feel it deep in my heart. I learned about this music when I was a young, impressionable person. And that's a big deal, stuff that happens when you're a kid, it gets into you more because you're such a blank slate. You're so impressionable. And so also, I make these trio records for a lot of purposes. My masters made the masters made records, and that's how they express themselves, and that's how I like to express myself through records. But also, I make records for the young saxophonist in school who's looking to play some new stuff, man, who doesn't want to just play All the Things You Are and Autumn Leaves all the time. Those are great tunes that I still play all the time, but we need more. We need somebody to step forward and say, look, y'all, if you get a gig, you want to have some cool arrangements, a little trio gig, here's like 4 records of like great trio arrangements that you can just play on your gigs, And so I'm doing it for the sort of the culture of playing this music. I got my arrangements when I was a kid doing gigs. Like I started doing gigs when I was 16. So those arrangements that I want to do, I just got off records. And man, like I've already had young cats like, hey man, I'm playing your arrangement of Angelica tonight on my gig. And thank you for that arrangement. And like, man, that's it. That's so exciting for me to be an influence on younger people. And, that's my key to eternity, right? That's my key to forever, is to like put these records out, have people play those arrangements, and so I make records for a bunch of different reasons, but yeah, those are the main ones, man.
Yeah, man, I love that, man. And that's not something that I hear a lot. A lot of times we lament the fact, oh man, the masters are gone, so maybe we don't have a chance to, be in their ensembles or get their direct tutelage. But like, what can we do at our ages, for the next generations and subsequent generations? And I love the way that you have that philosophy. It's like, man, here's this, take this, if you like this. I love that. Man.
Thank you, man. It's really important for young cats too, because they don't know that, young cats don't really have a lot of, at least when I was, I wanted to play stuff, but I couldn't come up with arrangements, and I just needed ideas. I needed stuff to play on gigs. And so, I just looked to my records. I looked to the records that I had. So, I want this to be a resource for young musicians, young tenor sax players, young guitar players that want to lead a trio.
Yeah.
And, maybe they can just have some repertoire, because a lot of these ones, man, you can bring in, you can just sort of say a little bit of this and that, and then count it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, I love it, man. I love it. And, man, tell me this, like, up here in the tri-state area, we've been on lockdown. We've just now started to come out. Clubs are open. They have been for the past, 2 months at least. In different parts of the country. I'm from Nashville originally. I just moved here maybe 2 months before the pandemic started. January 2020 was when I got here. But going back home last month, it's kind of a different scene than here, in Jersey and in New York. Richmond is kind of different. What are you seeing? What do you hope that we've learned from this pandemic thing? How can we better take control as artists, as creative people, to present the music the way we want it presented? Just your reflections on maybe what you've learned, or any advice that you may have as we kind of negotiate and navigate whatever the new normal is.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question. Well, I certainly learned during the pandemic that we can still be creative and still put out quality material remotely. But I don't know if you know about, Andy and Corey Fonville did this Thursday. They still do it every Thursday. They call it Thumpin' Thursday. And they put out just bass and drums, and then, they'll have the internet take that bass and drums and do whatever they want with it. And so I've done a lot of them. If you look on my Instagram, my YouTube, I've taken a lot of them, and it's been great because, it's new material. It's new things that
Mm-hmm.
that we can use to keep challenging ourselves through those times. And I learned how to do great home recording. I became a good videographer. I
Right.
became a good home recorder, and I became a better recording artist, and I still am a recording artist. And being a recording artist is different than being a performer. It's the skills obviously overlap, but it's a certainly different set of skills. And this really honed my skills as a recording artist. And it made me pivot my business model a little too, because people still send me waves over Dropbox where I add a saxophone solo and send it back. So I invested in some good microphones. I invested in some good monitors to make sure that what I'm sending sounds exactly what I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as, moving forward, certainly the gigs have come back hugely. Like I've been working. I went and recorded I just was in New York. I played Smalls on Sunday and recorded an album on Monday, and then went to MoMA on Tuesday because I had to go see the MoMA, man. I had to go see that. I had to go see that. There's a car show there now that I love cars. Anyway, so advice moving forward, man. I do get DM'd a lot from young people about how do I get a gig?
Mm-hmm.
How did you get your scene? How did you get your click? How do you get these people? You seem like, you always get a gig. You always have a gig. You're always working. I want to be like that. And I always wanted to be like that too. And so, one of the things you got to do is you got to go to a place where you want to work and become a little bit part of the scene there. You got to meet the people that work there and learn their music without them asking. If you see, if someone came up to me and said, "Hey man, I learned your song so-and-so and I have it memorized and I'd love to sit in with you and play it," I would be thrilled.
Mm-hmm.
And that has happened, and they're the ones that get to sit in because they've done the work. So, you have to be at the place where you want to play. You have to know the people you want to play with and literally just introduce yourself and ask how their get their records and learn their music and just, just befriend anybody that you think that you might want to play with that has gigs and have them be your mentor. And the only way that they're going to really want to spend any time with you and be your mentor is if you are passionate about their music, if you love their music. Right. So, and also, this is the thing that I think young people have the most problem with is patience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And when I say patience, I don't mean like not to get out there and grind and not to get out there and promote yourself. But I'm 49 and I've been at this since I was 16. And Downbeat wrote their first article ever about me last year. Mm-hmm. And I got my first 5-star review last year for this, album. Mm-hmm. And so it took me a long time. It took me like a lot of like, wow, here's a double album and it's incredible. And then it didn't get as much attention as I wanted. It's fine. I know it was good. Right. So we can just keep moving on. Like you have to have patience. You have to have perseverance. And you have to love music. And I know that really seems obvious, right? But like, you have to be in it for the right reasons. It's going to be hard and you're going to be broke sometimes and you're not going to want to get up and do the stuff. But the thing that's going to save you is if you actually love music. Yeah. Because that's the thing that's going to be the deciding factor of like, oh, do I really want to get up and do this? Oh, do I really? Well, yeah. Love is the big driving force of the universe, right? Love. So if you really love music and you really want to serve the music, which that's what I do, I serve the music whenever I play because the music has served me for so long. Then if you really want to serve the music and pay dues and do it, then it will actually happen. You have to have patience and keep working and really manifest what you want. If you want to play with that person, you get in front of that person. You learn their music. You write down their sets. You ask them if they have any charts. You learn the music by ear. Come into the next gig and say, "Hey, I learned this tune. It's your tune. If you're going to play it tonight, I got my horn. I want to play with you." Yeah. And if they say no, then fine. You just sit there and listen. Don't like be all dejected and walk out.
Right.
Yeah, man. I've got plenty of advice for the young cats, man, because I've been doing this since I was 16. Like my first gig was when I was 16. Wow. Yeah. Duke Ellington School of the Arts. We played Blues Alley
Mm,
sax quartet.
that's a beautiful start, man. That's a
Yeah,
beautiful
David
start.
Yarborough. Shouts to David Yarborough, who just retired after 35 years at Duke Ellington School for the Arts.
Man,
He was my teacher.
that's amazing, man. That's amazing.
Shout out to him. Shouts
And
out to Blues Alley too. Hope they find a new spot. They're
yeah,
looking for a new spot.
indeed, indeed, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, Charles, I'm gonna get you to hang on the line really quickly, but man, it's been a pleasure getting to meet you and talk with you, man. This 10
Same,
years,
dude.
a
Same.
heck of a project, man, and I know it's going far. I'm so glad we got to talk about it, man.
Me too. It's really cool to talk to you, Greg. Thank you, man.
Absolutely, absolutely.